when we talk about this nation, that we must have the kind of voice that speaks to the fact of what is known as a manifest destiny. So this ideology that God had called the colonists to take somebody else's land and slaughter them in the process. Nostalgia, romanticism that is not true. Nostalgia that speaks to this idea that the Western world is of human existence, which is a lie. That Africans in America should be happy that they made it here. And to erase us from American history, not realizing nor acknowledging the fact that we built this country. Let me say it again. We built this. Not only did we build it, that we allowed this country to become what is now. You can easily become a superpower when you got free labor for 400 years. The nostalgia and the romanticism that Christianity is not the property of Europe. That the faith that we practice is not something that was created in Rome or in France. Men gathered in Charlottesville because of nostalgia and romanticism. They felt that they were losing something. Some say it was the largest gathering of white supremacists, the KKK, the neo-Nazis. But do not be deceived. The KKK is and was a domestic terrorist organization. I find it interesting that there are those who have platforms that claim to be leaders, and they can point out terror in other countries, but they cannot open nor articulate their mouth to speak about the terror in a domestic realm that has gone on in this country for hundreds of years. How can you occupy 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and not open your mouth about an organization that sought to overthrow the American system of government? The nostalgia and romanticism that they gathered for. And it is this text that I lift up to you today that seems in an interesting way to speak to our current condition. Isaiah has a word for the people of Israel. God is not pleased. They claim to love God, but the actions do not live up to the claim. The prophet says, stop bringing your meaningless offerings. Stop worshiping one way and then operating another way. Your worship life has become detestable. You decided to rebel against me, and according to the history, the king became arrogant and refused to listen to counsel. The king made an alliance with the enemies of Israel. The king placed his family in prominent positions in the court, and no one would condemn him. This was bad, but what was egregious was the priesthood and the faith community was silent when the king was putting in place policies that hurt the poorest of the poor. Isaiah is the voice crying in the wilderness, reminding the people this is a spiritual battle. This is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and forces in the spiritual realm. Isaiah is saying the nation is in disarray because the people of faith failed. This falls not only at the feet in a contemporary aspect of those who operate in the church, but I must call out a specific brand of quote-unquote Christianity. To be evangelical, to take these evangelicals who say they love Jesus so much, silent when a black man was in the White House and was attacked over and 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 over his citizen question. They did not believe he was from America. To decide whether he went to Trinity or he was a Muslim. They could not figure out. There was a deafening silence from those who claimed to be the moral vanguard of America. And yet they were still silent when black lives were being lost. And yet they want to gather now and talk about we need reconciliation. I don't know about you. I have trouble with the term reconciliation when you've yet to even consider reparations. And you've yet to consider the damage that has been caused, but yet you want to reconcile with us, but you will not recognize what has happened historically in this country that we call America. There can be no reconciliation. You cannot have a real conversation unless we talk about restitution and the silence that has come from the pulpit. Unless you want to talk about who's sleeping with who, then your voice gets awful loud. Israel, the scripture says, you have rituals, worship, you sing, you dance, but you fail to see worship as a way of life. The scripture is saying in the first portion, a spiritual failure leads to a civic failure. Justice is not being done. Widows are being mistreated. Protection for the poor are being rolled back, and no one is defending the orphan and defending the oppressed. There is an unequal system operating in Israel, and the prophet is willing to call it out. And there is an unequal system operating in America. And we have in place a monarch. We have in place a monarch. Monarchies don't respect democracy. And in this time period, we are now witnessing an attorney general rolling back every forward progressive action that has taken place in the last 30 years, where even now they are putting the resources of the Department of Justice to find victims of reverse discrimination. Let me help y'all out. They're going to colleges to find out if there are too many black people who took the place of white people. Wait a minute. Something is wrong here. And if I may just give a personal statement and bring Reverend Nichelle in here, that both of us attended a school called Yale. We ran into people, I'm pretty sure. I remember running into one who was a legacy. That means their daddy went to Yale, and their mama went to Yale, their grandparents went to Yale, their great-grandparents, and there's a list where they have a spot because they are a legacy. But you're still missing it. We also ran into people whose mama and daddy donated, had a name on a building. And if your name is on a building, then you can call up the president of the university and say, my child, I know only got D's and C's, but since I gave $20 million to the school, I think my child should get in, along with his boys and his buddies, because we gave to the school. But really, one should understand that studies show that affirmative action has benefited mostly not people of color, but white women. That before there was affirmative action policies, it was 70 to 80% men in Ivy League schools. But do you know that women out-test men on standardized tests? So now Ivy League schools have to leave spots for men so they can have a gender balance. And the last time I looked, there's only 5% of brothers and sisters who are at these schools. But yet, you're saying one of us took your spot. Take your spot? First of all, I did better than you. I graduated with honors. What'd you do? Second of all, I'm just getting in the place just recently as a community for what was taken from us. You're still missing this. That we are always looking, America is looking for a scapegoat to say that it's somebody else, instead of looking in the mirror and say maybe we need to restructure our country, so that we can have the kind of society where everyone has an opportunity, instead of saying if you're privileged, you have an opportunity. If you're poor, you have no opportunity. Something is wrong, and Isaiah is saying, I detest your prayers. So don't come praying and giving your offerings when you are willing to harm the poor. White supremacy is fighting for his life. But I did not just come here to bring you bad news. I want to let you know that God is still speaking. When you open up the scripture, you hear the voice of Isaiah. With all the trouble in the land, Isaiah is speaking and saying, I heard from God this morning, and God wanted me to tell you that God is still on the throne. It does not matter who is king and who is counselor or who is the strategist in the king's court. God is still speaking. How do I know God is still speaking? Because I saw God speaking in Charlottesville, Virginia. You didn't see it. They didn't lift it up on CNN. They ignored it on Fox. They didn't talk about it on MSNBC. But if those of you who do not know the organizers, the ones who were protecting people, were clergy. Clergy showed up in their robes and in their stoles. When evangelicals said, we won't show up, there was a pastor in Charlottesville who was organizing on Thursday from the United Church of Christ by the name of Reverend Seth. He called in Tracy Blackman and called in Cornell West and called in everybody from around the country and said that we want to wear our stoles and our robes, and we're going to surround the monuments, and we're going to let them know that we are also too a part of America. But when that car ran through the crowd, before the EMTs got there, you saw people in robes and stoles attending to the victim. I'm trying to tell you that God is still speaking. They were not from mega ministries. They will not find them on TV with Creflo or Leroy Thompson. You will not find them with Juanita Bynum, and you will not find them with Joel Osteen. They come from small places like Staunton, Virginia, Lynchburg and Rocky Mount and Bessemer and Ellicott and Roanoke and Richmond and Petersburg and Southampton, Suffolk and Newport News, Hampton and Cary and Asheville. They are woke women, woke brothers. Some are UCC, some are UMC, some are AME, some are AME Zion. You have Unitarians, Jews, Presbyterians, Baptists, Pentecostals, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, Hindus, and some that don't even know anything about Jesus. But they showed up. God is still speaking. But I got to tell you the thing that blessed my heart when the racists showed up. There were some other anti-racists. But the anti-racists were not black. They were not brown. They were young white folks who grew up listening to hip-hop. And they said to some of the racists, "You will not pimp this butterfly. I come to you today to let you know our God is still speaking. Our God is still on the throne. Our God is still empowering. Our God is still working. Our God is still healing. Our God is in control. Keep fighting. Keep marching. Keep fighting. Keep marching. We're not there yet, but we will break down walls, kick open doors, change this country. Good day. May the Lord bless you real good. Is there anybody in here? Do you know God is still speaking? God is still speaking. God is still speaking. Regardless what is happening in this nation, I know that our God is still speaking. Still speaking through Tracy Blackman and William Barber. Still speaking through a Heber Johnson and a Leslie Callahan. God is still speaking. How do I know God's speaking? Well, I went to the youth revival. I heard Kevin Peterman, and I heard Calvin Jones. I heard a new generation that God is raising up. God is still speaking. Be not dismayed. Whatever betide, God will take care of you. God is still speaking. I invite you to stand across the sanctuary. The door of the church is open right now.